to ring the maternity unit and tell them that I'm having a lot of pain, and they're saying, oh, you think you're in labour? And I said, no, this is not labour. What kind of shaped me a bit from it was having a level of pain that, you know, if it gets worse, I just can't do it anymore. So, I've never had a birth plan because I'm quite cognizant that we can't really plan for these things.
Thanks for joining us today on Beyond the Labour Ward. We're really fortunate to have Jen come and share her story. She really had 3 uncomplicated pregnancies, but the delivery of her 3rd baby really was, none of us were prepared for that. So let's hear her story. Thanks for joining us today on Beyond the Labour Ward.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting story that you've got to tell us, and I remember all of the details as much as I can, but it's really good to hear it from your point of view. So, we first met before you fell pregnant.
We did.
I think you were having trouble conceiving.
We were. So we've always known that I've had a few autoimmune syndromes, so we always knew that it would probably be more difficult.
Right.
So yeah, after a little while, probably after the year of trying, and also receiving a diagnosis of the PCOS, it was felt that we were best to go and see a specialist from our family doctor, and that specialist was, we referred to as you, because this was an area that you have interest. Yeah,
definitely. And so for those out there who don't know, PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's different varieties of it, but essentially it means your ovaries aren't ovulating in the manner that they should, and that's likely why you were having trouble with fertility. So there's different ways you can treat this, and you sort of start out easy and you work your way up. And so we started out with some treatment to kind of try and force the ovaries to ovulate, but that wasn't really working. So
no, so I think the next step for us obviously was that we did have to go and have a referral to go through the IVF process. Yeah.
Okay. And I know that you're a healthcare professional yourself, but can you describe to us how the IVF went for you?
We had quite a positive experience with IVF. We were able to have a pregnancy off our first round. I suppose we also knew it was going to be more difficult to fall pregnant, just owing to my autoimmune processes. So we did start when I was a bit younger, so we probably did aim to have children a little bit earlier than maybe others.
Okay. So you conceived after your first cycle of IVF?
We did. We were very lucky.
That's good. Okay. And that pregnancy, from my memory, was fairly uncomplicated.
It was.
Until the point of delivery, but until it was pretty uncomplicated.
It was actually just very straightforward pregnancy. So yeah.
But what was your first baby's name?
So we've got Mai as our eldest.
And so Mai was in a bit of a hurry to get here.
She was.
And so how many weeks were you when things started?
I think I was 30. I was actually 36 weeks exactly the day she was born. Yeah.
So it's not extremely premature, but it is still a little bit premature.
Yeah. She was well. I think she was preterm, but she was well. Yeah.
And one of the things, because you worked in the hospital that you delivered at, I do remember that they had planned for you to have a kitchen tea or a little bit of a celebration, but you'd had the baby before they could actually organise them.
We did.
Yeah.
So we sort of had we were actually at the rugby and Australia was winning against the Springboks. So my husband said, are you sure you're okay? And I said, I think it's just a stomach bug. So we finished the night back, but then realised it was the beginning of contractions. But I still had 3 shifts left to complete. So I had to call in sick, let them know.
And anyway, you came into labour and did extremely well in labour. It was a very normal birth and that was uncomplicated. And how long did she have to spend in the nursery?
Oh, we were really lucky because she didn't lose any weight.
Right.
So she put it on the 100 grams in the few days and fed very, very well. So I think we had our 4 nights in hospital, and then I think you extended both our stays by a day so that we could come home all of us together.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're really lucky we didn't have to leave her by herself or anything like that.
It's nice that it all worked out well that way. So then, I think, was it IVF again for the second pregnancy?
Yes,
Yeah.
so back
Yeah.
to the cycles.
Did you have to collect fresh embryos, or did you have some stored?
So I guess the hard thing was to being PCOS and then having the IVF. When they stimulate you so that you can produce the eggs, the problem is you've already got so many cysts on the ovary and they all stimulate.
Yes,
so
they do.
despite the fact that they would aspirate, they lost count at 50, we only really got 3 eggs out of that first cycle, so, which is quite deflating. But from that first batch, yes, we were able to have a second pregnancy off the first round. So we're very, very lucky. Yeah.
Okay. And again, that was a very straightforward pregnancy.
Very textbook.
And this time you all the way to full term.
But I think that was helped because I think I was 36 weeks and had 3 more shifts to go, and I think it's a very active job, and so it was, I think, really in part due to your guidance telling me maybe it's best to finish up at 35 weeks this time and just rest. And for that reason, yes, we went all the way to 39 weeks, I think, with our second,
And once again, just a very normal, straightforward birth.
Very
and
normal.
it's nice to have a baby straight away with you.
That's right. It was a very, very different experience.
Often people who had babies that go to the nursery the first time, they find it difficult to sleep because they can just hear all the little noise of their baby straight away for the second time, and it can be a little bit, just different.
Yeah, I think it is. I think each time it's been really different.
Certainly, yeah. Okay, so that's really good. And again, third pregnancy, IVF again. Was this a frozen embryo or was this a fresh cycle?
We had to do a fresh cycle then. So, and that's different again. That's very different having IVF and then having 2 little ones as well. So, yeah, I think you're lucky in that you've already seen that this is a process that you can believe in. So you've got a lot more optimism going into these things. Yeah,
having had a really positive experience.
very positive. So
it makes it
a lot less stressful, I think, going through.
And was it just the one cycle you had to go through again?
So another lot of egg collection, which is a lot to do with 2 little ones and having all the medications and things. Yeah.
And the timing regime, it's like military precision, and you have to turn up for the egg collection at an exact time. You can't sort of say, I'm going to be a couple of hours late because that'll just be too late. You can't.
Yeah.
So it's very regimented. So having to navigate that with children.
It is different, and I think you do have. The other thing that's a little bit different is that you're encouraged not to take your little ones in with you because that can be quite stressful for other people there. So it's also manically dropping your children off at different odd times to friends' houses.
Did you have family around? Is it mostly friends that you had?
No, we didn't really. Yeah, we don't really had family close by around at that time. Yeah.
Okay. So again, pregnancy, conceived, happy days, very straightforward pregnancy, but wow.
Yeah.
I'm still traumatised myself, but we'll go through that in a minute. But it was just a unique set of circumstances that created a really challenging situation. And you came into labour. Wait, you weren't even in labour. I just remember you presenting to the birthing unit, and you just couldn't breathe. You were having terrible pain breathing. It's with my notes. I've written notes that you had, and whenever you're having a contraction, it was giving you bad chest pain. That's what I've written. Do you remember that at all? Do you remember anything of this?
I do. I remember that really quite well because I think it was a lot of pain because I was having a lot of pain on my left side, lateral sort of chest area. And at first I was a bit optimistic, remembering that she was position breech, and I thought, well, maybe it's that. I'm getting sort of kicks and things. And then it got to the point where it was quite overwhelming. So in the middle of the night, there was a phone call. My sister had moved back to Australia by then, so we were quick to ring my sister and my brother-in-law to come to the house because we knew we had to do something. And then to ring the maternity unit and tell them that I'm having a lot of pain, and they're saying, oh, you think you're in labour? And I said, no, this is not labour. I've had 2 natural births before. I know what contractions feel like. This is something really different. And then we were told, well, you've really got to come into the maternity unit. So in we went, yeah.
And I'm going to say some words here which you might feel uncomfortable with, but really, all the time I've known you, you've never been a complainer. You've always been incredibly stoic and tremendously resilient, and to see you so uncomfortable was very unusual. And so I was a bit concerned for you.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think it got to the level, and I think that was sort of part of what kind of shaped me a bit from it, was having a level of pain that, you know, if it gets worse, I just can't do it anymore. So I think that was something that was that really sort of something that shaped me from that experience. Yeah, the level of pain.
So I think we agreed that it would be best if we just, because it seemed that the pain was worse when you had a contraction.
Definitely.
And that was a big feature, and we couldn't work out what the nature of this pain was. The baby was safe. Nothing on your observation was telling us anything was like life-threatening, but you know, it was concerning. So we agreed that it would be best, I think, to just deliver the baby. And the baby wasn't breech.
No, she had turned.
She turned around, which was a gift. And so you'd never had an epidural for your previous 2 labours.
No, and I don't think I had a choice in this circumstance. It wasn't something that I was. I've never had a birth plan because I'm quite cognizant that we can't really plan for these things. Maybe I'm lucky because I worked in a hospital. I've got that broader view. But one thing I really wanted to resist was caesarean and epidural if possible. But with the pain, it got to a point where there's no choice, and that's just what has to become part of the story. The anaesthetist came in and he said, what do you think's wrong with you? And I said, I don't know. Yeah. And thank goodness for his foresight, he did a really high epidural.
Yeah, so normal epidurals are in the lower part of the lumbar spine area, like L4, L3, whereas he felt that it would be better to do one in the thoracic area.
Which was
he was we are blessed with so many good anaesthetists in this particular hospital, and so he put a thoracic epidural in, which gave you relief of that pain. And honestly, I think that's the first time I saw you relax that whole day. And you said, I can finally breathe, you know, and it was...
Yeah. I think that I was so grateful for him having that foresight to think laterally and go so high. Yeah. But as it goes on and with the story, I think that was also something that sort of affected my processing of what happened.
Yeah. So anyway, the labour went pretty quickly, as would expect for a 3rd pregnancy. We broke your waters, put some Syntocinon on to make the contractions come, and then you delivered. So now, first baby's name's May, second baby Mai, and second baby
Quinn.
Quinn, and so this was
little Tien.
Tien, 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 and so Tien was born, and she came out and was initially quite well.
Yeah.
But she looked like she needed some assistance pretty quickly. What do you remember of this situation?
So, to go back a little bit.
Let's go back,
So I guess having given birth naturally 2 times, there's something very different about being in labour and then just listening to the rhythm of the labour and pushing with contractions, to having an epidural and being like real numb so much for your body, and then getting told push, and then getting told you're doing well, and not getting any physical feedback from that. And then also feeling quite heady from all the relief that you're getting. You feel quite, you haven't got quite the same cognizant approach to it all. And so once she was delivered, I guess it was very, very smooth. And I didn't even see her. I think she was delivered, and I remember saying, "Why isn't she crying?" And then she was weighed, and I just said, "Why isn't she crying?" And then the next step was, I think you took her from the room and you were gone. And the next thing was just the cardiac alarm going off.
So, from my memory of the events, you delivered your baby and you did a really good job with that epidural, because it is hard to push with an epidural sometimes, and some people find that really challenging. She came out, she needed some assistance, but she wasn't in a terrible dire straits. You know, she was okay, but she didn't really cry, that vigorous cry that you probably had learned to expect with other ones. And your placenta was delivered, and that was fine. And then I was called to another room because I had another lady in labour at the same time across the corridor, which was, you know, fortunate that I was there. So I was assisting her with her birth, and she had just delivered, and then one of the midwives came in and said, "Peter, can you help with a baby resuscitation in the nursery," which was just next door. And I said, "Sure." Having no idea that it was your baby. And so I walked into the nursery, and there I saw Kwok, your husband, and I went, "What?" You know, it was quite, my heart skipped a beat. So your baby had a respiratory arrest, which was where she stopped breathing. And so I had to help her, and we did, which was good. But that was, you know, it's always, and in the moment I'm pretty calm and I do what I have to do. And we were waiting for the paediatrician to come, and I did some manoeuvres and things to help the baby, and she started breathing again, and she had lost her heartbeat for a minute, but then she recovered her heartbeat after we did some things. And to get to the chase, she basically appeared to be septic and suffering from an infection. And so really what she needed was some fluid bolus and some supportive measures, and so that all happened. And the paediatrician then came and took over, and then we worked and stabilised her. And I hadn't really had much time to come and talk to you. I probably had come and said hello and told you what was happening and come back, and I wasn't. And I think they were getting the epidural out of you, and you were up having a shower, and you were getting ready to come and see your baby. During that time when we were resuscitating your baby, what was happening with you?
So it's quite confronting having your child taken from the room and working in a hospital. That cardiac alarm still is a bit of a trigger for me, hearing it at work. But thinking that I just hope that's not my baby. I hope that's not mine that it's going off for, and then knowing that it is. And the problem with that is having an epidural in is you can't even run to her. And then I remember, because I didn't get a chance to hold her next to me like I had with the other two. And I hadn't felt the labour because I'd had the epidural, so that was almost like being in a dream state. Like in a dream state, we don't really hear things in our dream, and we don't really feel things in our dream. We've just got that illusion of it. So it was kind of felt like a bit of an illusion giving birth to her, and then saying, "Oh, she's here," and then not seeing her, and then her being taken from the room. And when they said, "Do you want to come and see her?" because obviously she had to go off to a tertiary referral children's hospital by the ambulance. They said, "Do you want to come and see her?" And I didn't really know if I did, because I thought if she doesn't live, maybe it would feel more like a dream. That having not seen her or felt the birth, I could package that away a bit. But at the end of it, I thought, what would I regret more? Would I regret never having seen her and that being something I couldn't get back, or just trying to push that away? And then I thought, no, I'll see her before she goes off to the ambulance. And I think a huge part of our success through this whole event has been the amazing quality of healthcare workers we've had who helped us through this. As soon as I saw our paediatrician, who I've always wanted since he was there for my first daughter and our second, and I elected definitely to have him there for our third, having the team that came from the Children's Hospital to transport her, and their competence just shone through, and yourself as well. It meant that I could surrender a lot of that control, because I wasn't well. And when you're not well, if you can offload some of that weight and burden onto people who can take that baton and run with it, it just is such a freedom. So I'm so glad that we just had such a just amazing group of people there to support us to take that burden. Yeah.
I do remember you coming to the nursery, and I remember you reaching and holding your hand and laying your hand on her, and then when they, the NETS team, the retrieval team, to take her to the, and to me, it's slightly unfortunate. To me, the slightly unfortunate thing was that the only hospital that had a bed was literally on the other side of the city. Oh. So, but that's probably not, it wasn't inconsolable. But to me, I was worried about that. But that was probably
and not to us, because the truth was our paediatrician also works from that hospital,
right.
And he was so supportive. He said, "Your little one is just in the best place." And then I think having people like that around you and their confidence.
Yes, there's no doubt that it's definitely the best place for it.
Yeah.
And I was concerned that you might have had a pulmonary embolism with the chest pain that you had and your oxygen sats dropping like they did. I was very worried about that. That was my and I thought this could be really serious. So that's why we elected to do a CT scan, and of course there was no delay in getting that when they all knew it was you. They would never delay for anybody in that situation, but so we got you down to the CT scan department, and fortunately you did not have a pulmonary embolism. Do you remember having the CT scan?
I do. It was agony because that table is so hard.
And you were so sore.
I was so sore. Yeah.
And what was the result of the CT scan?
I think I had a pneumonia, and I had a pleural effusion. A large pleural effusion. So a lot of my left lung was having to accommodate that amount of fluid. And
so which to me was like, oh, that's a good, we can deal with that. But the thing is, suddenly there's just all these little light bulbs come on going, that explains why you had terrible pain, explains the pain you had on that side of your body, and anything that's moving on that side of your body, like when the uterus contracts, it was just irritating. And the lung, which was all really inflamed and had this fluid around it, it was quite dramatic. And so you were admitted to intensive care. And the doctors down there looked after you brilliantly.
They did.
And so I had a handover with them, and I walked back up to the birthing unit, and one of the midwives looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And when I realised I wasn't, I just wept in that tea room. I got a mum in one ICU and a baby in another ICU, and it was very stressful afterwards, me just recovering from, having had to resuscitate both mum and baby in situations that I wasn't expecting to be in. And anyway, I'm sorry for, getting a bit emotional then, but that's what happens. And
the truth is that we just were so lucky. I think we're quite private people, and we didn't really say a lot throughout my whole stay in ICU. And the people who we drew so much strength from, me personally, was yourself, our beautiful paediatrician who would visit me even though he didn't have any of our family in the hospital. Like, he had my child wasn't in the hospital, but he would see me every single day. And I guess the ICU staff that I was familiar with, obviously my husband, you haven't ever seen him as broken as what he was when he came in, and the cardiac alarm was still ringing in the background, and he just looked so broken when he came in, and I knew it was her. And in the days to follow, that's when I realised that he was at capacity. His new role was going to be being with our little girl, because I was literally in a bed with an IV in one arm and an art line in the other. So I wasn't going to be going anywhere. And I think there was a point when I was admitted to ICU where you get that grit and you say, now's the time to get going and get well. And then that became the new direction, was I had to get out of there. And the paediatrician was my cheerleader, saying that when you have a reason to get well, it's amazing how quickly you can get well. And that's what happened. So I think with my brother-in-law, who also works at the hospital, my husband going backward and forward between hospitals, and yourself and the paediatrician, that was my support team. And I think with a very clear goal in mind, I was ready to get out of ICU, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, once you recovered from that, you really just got better pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were motivated. Now, how long did Tien spend in the NICU?
I really don't know. I wasn't really well, and I think, as I said to you, I didn't even know her birthday for a little while. So I'm not really, all I remember is that the day I had to go into hospital was the last day of the school term for my eldest, who was in kindy. And I kind of feel by the end of that school holiday, we completed the whole full circle, and she went back to kindergarten, and we were kind of nearly all back at home again. So it sort of was, to everyone around us, it looked like nothing had happened, except a little baby was born in the school holidays. Yeah.
Wow.
and that was what we presented for long enough until we could process it ourselves, I think, yeah.
Okay. How did you go breastfeeding?
Everything was fine in that way. We were so fortunate, and I think something really very, very important to me, I expressed to our paediatrician how concerned I was, because there's so much emphasis on that first time when a baby's placed on mum's chest after birth, and then they have that first feed together, and there's that bonding that happens in the first few 2 weeks that's so pivotal to both mum and bub. And I didn't get that. I thought, when I get this little baby back, she's not even going to know who I am. We have not had that bonding time at all. And he said to me, no, it'll be there. And I said, but we haven't had that time. And he said, no, it'll be there. And then he was just so correct. Even though we were separated for quite a time, we just picked up where we left off. Yeah.
Isn't that great? So, thanks for sharing that story. It's very, it's unusual to have gone through that. You're very resilient, and I know that you're very private, and that's been very brave of you. So now you're a mum of 3. How old are the kids now?
So our eldest Mai is 13, the twin is 10, and Tien is 7.
I can't believe it's been 7 years. That's amazing. So you've had these, you've had this pretty dramatic, start to Tien's life, and you being pretty sick at the same time. If you had some other mum that was going through, like the baby in the nursery who's not well, and you're having a conversation with them, is there something you'd like to share with them if you had the chance?
The only thing is, I feel like when we were in the NICU at Prince of Wales, there were little bubs there that were much more unwell than her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, I suppose it just gives you a glimpse that this is sort of this silent tragedy that I think a lot of families go through. And I think after that day, I sort of lost a little bit of my lightness. It's like gravity gets a little bit more of a hold on you, and you feel a little bit more mortal after going through all these things. I think any trauma kind of shapes you a lot. It weathers you. It's like erosion. It kind of just, you are the same person, but you come out the side just that little bit different. Yeah. So you do become much more grateful for just life and just a really healthy baby. We've been so fortunate with Tien. I guess one major outcome that could have been ours was that Tien would have developed cerebral palsy. That didn't become our reality, but I guess we were always told by the paediatrician, she may not be as good at things like some executive function and mathematics and that kind of abstract thought. But we've really come out the other side unscathed, and coming back to that, metaphor of it being almost dreamlike is you do look at this little child who's thriving, who's doing so well at school, and it's hard to imagine that was the same little child where she was when she first started out. We're just so far from there now, yeah.
Thanks for coming today. I'm really grateful that you come and share your story.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, yeah.